So any habits that you have, good or bad, they're actually pretty easy to identify, pretty easy to break. But in that same vein, it's actually pretty easy to instill a good new habit. And it comes down to three really simple things. Okay, so when we start understanding how habits work, we can identify so many little things that we have good and bad habits towards. Now, some of the things that I recognize with myself is when I get to the office, I have a habit of going and having some matcha green tea, and then I get rolling through my day, and it's like I'm seeking a reward from that. Now, that's not a bad thing, but it's just a simple example. It's like I have my cue, then I have the action, and then I have the reward. And psychologists have talked about this before. It's actually pretty common. So it's actually broken down into three parts. There literally, with every habit, is a cue, there is an action, and there is a reward. So a cue is also known as a trigger. So for me, for example, with that, my cue or my trigger is I walk into the office, I may have like a sense of the smell of the office, the way it looks, things like that. And then my immediate action is to go and get myself some matcha. And that's sort of my action. And then I get the reward. And the reward is kind of twofold in this case. So in this case, the reward is literally consuming something, like I actually get the effect from the food itself, but then I also get a dopamine hit just from satisfactory response. Right, I feel really good because I just completed the task, I completed the action. So when you look at every single habit that you have, they all come down to these simple three things. So again, if we understand our cues, our triggers, we understand our actions, and we understand what the reward that we're trying to get out of something is, it makes life really easy. So an example, in a bad way, is going to be like smoking or drinking, right? Okay, you get that same kind of thing. You have a cue. Maybe it's getting home from work. That's your cue, and psychologically, that's just your cue to take an action. So you take an action, you drink or you smoke, and then you have your reward. Your reward, in the case of smoking and drinking, is really, really simple, okay? You're getting literally a physiological response that's giving you kind of a neurotransmitter high. You're getting an acetaldehyde response from alcohol, and you're getting any kind of neurotransmitter response from nicotine. So there you go, there's your reward. And that's kind of hijacked because we have sort of that physiologic response that comes from a drug, but it's still the same sort of thing. Now, here's where it becomes a problem to develop good habits. Good habits, things like meditation or working out or eating right, have sort of a delayed reward, okay? So the whole trifecta is completely thrown off. So normally you have your cue, you have that action and that reward that all happens boom, boom, boom. But with exercise, for example, you can set up a cue, you can set up a trigger, you can put your gym bag by your door so you have a trigger to go to the gym. You go to the gym, you take the action, but other than a little bit of an endorphin response right afterwards, you don't get the reward that you're truly seeking. It's delayed gratification. And there's been a lot of studies that have looked at delayed gratification, and it takes a special kind of individual to really process delayed gratification and really benefit from even delayed gratification. But the fact is that if you still understand the cue and you understand the action and you understand the reward, you can still develop the overall cycle. And that's what we really need to focus on. So what about breaking a bad habit though? Because this is what's really tough. Okay, a lot of people will tell you that you can't break a habit. You can never just stop doing something to break a habit, but that's total hogwash. You absolutely can. You can break a habit simply by neglecting that cue, that trigger. Eventually that goes away. And people will also tell you that once something is ingrained in your mind that you're always gonna have that habit. That is so not true. It doesn't work like that at all. You see, the brain has developed a habit. It can get rid of that habit too. It just takes time. And once the brain is neglected of that specific cue, sure, you'll have withdrawals because you'll be wanting to have that response. But again, if you can just identify what the cue is and remove the cue, it changes everything for you. It truly can change everything. So breaking a bad habit is as simple as removing yourself from the situation. People don't like to think of it like that because it feels like you're kind of hijacking it, like you're just not really, or you're jerry-rigging it. You're not truly fixing the problem. But there's a reason that methadone works, right? There's a reason, because it's making it so that people are still getting some kind of reward, some kind of dopamine response, but they're getting it without their recreational drug that's harmful to their body. They're getting it through something that's a little bit safer and allowing them to actually withdraw in a safe, controlled way. So if we think of substituting something else or something bad for something else in our life, we think of it as sort of a healthy methadone in our own life. That makes a big difference. So I encourage you to do that. Now, when it comes down to starting a new habit, you need to create a new cue, and you need to create a new action, and you need to identify the reward. You can't always create the reward. So what I mean by that is, if you want to get in the habit of meditating, then you need to trigger something. You need to have something that's going to be a trigger for your meditation, like what's going to trigger you to want to meditate. Then, of course, your action is going to be the meditation, but then you need to forcefully give yourself a reward. Why? Because you're not going to see that immediate benefit from meditation. Same with working out, right? So it messes everything up. So you game the system a little bit. Give yourself a little piece of dark chocolate. Give yourself a little bit of a treat right when you're done with the meditation. Now, full disclaimer, you're going to start craving chocolate when you're done with meditation now. But that's okay, because at least you are getting the cue ingrained in your mind. Once the cue is ingrained in your mind, you will take the action. And the action of meditation or the action of exercise will far supersede the negative effect of that little piece of chocolate. I promise you that. You're developing a bigger habit in spite of a small reward versus the complete opposite. And eventually, over time, when you've seen body composition changes, you can substitute that reward for the actual body composition reward that has occurred over time. I hope that that makes sense, but this is a very in-depth look at a very simple thing. Okay, that simple cue, that simple trigger is everything. That's everything when it comes down to just becoming a new person and making a true state change. So, sorry about driving in this. I had to run some errands. I wanted to make sure that I relayed a topic that made a lot of sense for just everyday life. As always, make sure you're keeping it locked in here on my channel. If you have ideas for future videos, you know where to put them. I'll see you soon.